The most valuable lesson I would learn is that when you address a people by their right name, that name must relate to land, history, and culture. All people go back to the geography of their original origin and identify themselves, no matter where they live on the face of the earth. We have overused the word black because black tells you how you look, but it don't tell you who you are. You can call an Italian white, but that don't tell you anything about him. We are the only people who seem to have lost that all essential trait of geographical and historical reference.
Paragraph. In the year 65 BC, the Roman armies under General Pompey captured Jerusalem. In 70 AD, General Vespasian and his son Titus put an end to the Jewish state with great slaughter. All right. During the period of the military governors of Palestine, many outrages and atrocities were committed against the residue of the people. During the period from Pompey to Julius, it has been estimated that over 1 million Jews fled where? Into Africa. This is Shemayawan. Yeah, I'm going to show you some things, just putting two and two together, connecting the dots, showing you how, we call ourselves Israelites, Hebrew Israelites. But a lot of people really just don't get the logistics of why we call ourselves Israelites. We know who we are based on prophecies. We know that the Israelites always had to go west. That's one of the biggest things on how we know we ended up in West Africa. So let's look at this map here. This is a map. I want to show you how people in general who live in the Middle East, where they normally run. Just to show you what people have always done. Alright? Most of your resources were always here in this area. In that area. All in Africa, Egypt. Most of your resources normally, most people don't realize, but you see the Red Sea, most of your cities are always along the rivers. You look in Minnesota, they got the Mississippi River. You go, California is about the water. New York got the Hudson Bay. You got rivers, large bodies of waters govern cities. That's how they have their trade, their exports, their imports, everything comes in through the water system. That's why the Mediterranean Sea was such a great sea. Most of your resources, exports, imports come in that way. But not getting off topic, most of the people always fled from the east to the west. Alright, so we're going to start off here. And I'm going to bring out a few books here and there. I'm also going to show a few videos. I want to focus in on right now Iraq, because this is fresh on people's minds. A lot of you guys were young when this happened in 2003. Some of you guys are still in high school, but this is a good example. I remember when this war took place in Iraq. Most of the people there, they got a 72-hour time frame to leave Iraq before the military war jumped off there. So a lot of people were living their lives day to day, getting married, just living life. Okay, so I'm gonna show you some footage on basically how it was there. All right, and we're gonna show you where the Iraqis actually fled to. Okay, this is a video on on the hours or the days right before the war took place in 2003, and I'm just going to run it and let you see it. People are just living their lives, doing the things, and then that great destruction happened. And that's the same way it's going to happen here in the Mystery Babylon. Iraq was known as Babylon in the ancient days, but since then the name has changed over the last 100, 200 years to Iraq. Actually, the last 100 years they changed it to Iraq. It was always Babylon.
It is this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger. On my orders, coalition forces have begun striking selected targets of military importance to undermine Saddam Hussein's ability to wage war. Decades of deceit and cruelty have now reached an end. Saddam Hussein and his sons must leave Iraq within 48 hours. Their refusal to do so will result in military conflict, commenced at a time of our choosing. For their own safety, all foreign nationals, including journalists and inspectors, should leave Iraq immediately. Many Iraqis can hear me tonight in a translated radio broadcast, and I have a message for them. If we must begin a military campaign, it will be directed against the lawless men who rule your country, and not against you. As our coalition takes away their power, we will deliver the food and medicine you need. We will tear down the apparatus of terror, and we will help you to build a new Iraq that is prosperous and free. In a free Iraq, there will be no more wars of aggression against your neighbors, no more poison factories, no more executions of dissidents, no more torture chambers and rape rooms. The tyrant will soon be gone. The day of your liberation is near. It is too late for Saddam Hussein.
So you heard George Bush. He said he's going to send his military force into Iraq, and this is what happened. Gave him 48 to 72 hours for the people to leave that place. So when destruction hits, when armies encamp around a place and get ready to go to war, where do the people flee? Okay? Where do they flee? This is Iraq right here. This is 72 hours after that speech that we just saw. You can see all kinds of missiles and everything hitting Iraq. So Iraq is no longer the Iraq that was once known. It is now part of the United Nations. So let's find out what happened to the people who were there. Like I said, people always seem to have to go somewhere. They flee to safe zone. Alright? So I'm going to show you where the Iraqis flee. Now getting to the meat, I'm going to go ahead and show you where these men and women, children, fled to. I'll run the video here. It says, according to the UN, since the beginning of the war in 2003, over 1.5 Iraqis have fled Iraq. More than half of them are believed to be in Syria. So it's showing you where they went. They went to the west, towards the water. Okay? They went west.
This is what you might call Little Baghdad in Syria.
Alright. Syria is also known as real close to Damascus, so most of the people went to Damascus, which is above Israel.
In communities like this one on the outskirts of Damascus, Iraqi refugees are setting up shop. They come from places that are by now familiar.
You see, they're all dark people, you know, but a lot of these people are, you know, there's a mixture of people there, even though they know their fathers. You know, one thing about Ishmael, he knows who his fathers are. It's one of the only few nations who haven't been disrupted from knowing who the fathers are. But the Greeks also went down there, and when they conquered, they mixed their seed with a lot of different people. So you got a mixture of people in Iraq and in Syria. The Grecians, which are the Edomites. So it's just interesting information when you see this. It just makes you wonder. And, you know, it's just showing you.
So you do the trip twice a month from Baghdad to Syria? Yeah. And is it dangerous? I asked him what he does for protection, and he says he prays to God and he drives really fast. Yeah, there's like a bunch of people around. Everyone's standing around you.
So for the most part, most of the people, like you said, 1.5 million fled into Syria. That's the point, okay? That's the point you have to remember. So we're going to move on. So from Iraq to Syria, that's quite a ways. You see that? That's quite a ways. Quite a ways to walk or run or even flee, period. But if it's whether by car or by plane, it's still a long ride. So now we know where they went. They went west.
Completely surrounded. And the crowd became quite emotional when they found out that we were from an American television channel.
But they say there is no future and their hope is lost.
He's saying that they don't need oil, they don't need much. The only thing they want is to go back to a safe country.
Right, so the whole point is this. Israel is lost right now because they don't have a land, they don't have a nationality, they don't have any understanding of who they are. So this is a prime example right here, but this is only in the last 15 years. So you can imagine what happens in over 1,500 years.
Where they were playing football. Hyder says it was American.
We went from Iraq to Syria. Now I want to take you from Syria to where these people want to flee. Syria and Damascus, they got to flee somewhere, right? Notice they never flee to Europe. Why? Because it's more difficult to go into the northern country than it is to go south or west. Okay, when you go into the northern country, you got to go through visas, you got to go through border security, you got to get passports, you got to find a place to stay. Okay, you got to go through refugee camps. So most people are not going to flee north, and that's never been the case. I mean, it's actually always been the case. They would always flee south or west. Okay, so let's see this. These people here are going to pass right over Israel because they know in Israel they won't be able to stay. But there's a few that probably dropped off there. They went past the Gaza Strip. The Gaza Strip is where Samson was fighting the armies of the Philistines. Right in there, that's where Samson was. For a lot of you brothers that don't know. Okay, and they went past the Gaza Strip. Talking about the refugees now. They went past the Suez. A lot of people went into Cairo, which is Egypt. Okay, you notice the Mediterranean Sea is still by the sea where they can get exports, imports. A lot of resources come through here. They still can live. They blend in with these people. Okay, the people from Syria, Iraq, can blend in with the people in Cairo. All right, notice that. So I want to show you that now. Some video footage.
2 months ago, Nadir Abu Wasim made what he describes as the hardest decision of his life. He sold his car in Damascus, packed some clothes, and flew to Cairo. He took his wife and daughter, but he couldn't afford to take the rest of the family.
I lost my factory. Everything we had in Syria, we lost. I came because I'm afraid of the regime and of what is happening. I'm afraid for my family.
Muhammad is 20 years old. He left Syria because he refused to join the army, and fleeing was his only option.
Only option is to flee.
I have no idea what's happening to my family in Damascus.
The United Nations estimate around 100,000 Syrian refugees have fled to Egypt since March 2011.
You hear that?
Only 13,000 have registered, but the UN expect that number to triple by June.
So it's easier to flee into Egypt.
Little Syria, because tens of thousands of Syrian refugees now live and work here. Many of them arrive with very little money, but they use that money to pay for rent. Happy at least not to be living in refugee camps.
Happy at least not to be living in refugee camps.
Syrian refugees health care and education at the same rate as Egyptians. They're also allowing visa extensions. But as the numbers increase, their presence is straining Egypt's fragile economy.
Right.
As the crisis.
Okay, so let's look at this real quick. Let's look at this map. So we spoke that the Iraqis ran to Syria. The Syrians and the Iraqis ran to Egypt. Some ran to Libya. Some even went further down into Sudan or Chad or Niger. Most of them stayed around the coastal areas. Some stayed in Algeria. Now, why are they staying in these northern areas? Because they're not under attack. People will stay where there's safety. Okay, now when the Israelites went into West Africa, this is where we were going first and foremost: Egypt, Libya, Algeria. But when we were under attack by the Arabs, they started moving further down into Mali, Niger, Chad, Nigeria, which all of these names were not the names of West Africa at that time. And I'll show you a map a little later. These are the new names changed. Alright? Okay, we always ran where resources were. Not just resources, but safety. We found safety in West Africa, in the land of Canaan. Okay? So like I said earlier, our people always ran to where the Hamites were. We didn't go towards the other nations, always towards the Hamites to hide amongst them. Because we were a dark people. We were different shades of brown. So it was easier to blend in with the people of the West. So this is where the Israelites went. Okay? Now in these areas, what you have going on is a lot of treasure hunts. What I mean by treasure hunts is you got all the nations of the earth in these areas, sucking it dry. Sucking all the resources dry. Some of the resources that you can find in the ground there is iron ore. Iron ore is what you make cars with. Okay, you got oil for fuel, gasoline. All right, with oil you can make many things. You know, everything we see around us has oil in it. Tires, computers, cell phones, the plastics in your car, pesticides, all that got oil in it. Okay, so this is what everybody's fighting over, this land. Europe doesn't have resources, not like South Africa and America. But mainly, when I said South Africa, I really meant the whole continent, okay? Because it's below Europe. So all of this area has resources, and people go there to steal the resources so they can keep their nation going. Like China, Japan, and America, Canada, Europe, they take the resources to replenish or to keep their economy going. Alright? A lot of people don't understand that that oil that they're getting out of the ground in the Middle East and out of Africa, they hardly ever speak about that, but they're draining oil in Africa too. Gold, silver, diamonds. Okay, the oil that they got is called fossil fuel. Alright, fossil fuel comes from fossils. Okay, all the animals and the so-called dinosaurs. I say so-called because in the Bible they called them dragons. That's a brand new word, dinosaurs. Okay, so what they was doing, what the elites are doing is draining the oil from this fossil fuel that's been saturated in the earth, mainly from the flood. When the flood came, all the animals just decayed into the ground, leaving deposits of their bone marrow, the oil in their body, and it just stacked up upon each other. That's why they're just draining that oil out of that area. Eventually, it's going to deplete. You know, it's just the laws of science, basically. You know, you use something up, you keep using something, eventually you're going to use it up. So what are they going to do? Keep moving around. Alright. Not getting off track. The Israelites always fled west. That's what I'm trying to say. That's why you see the arrows and stuff I got going into the west side of Africa. Or back in those days they called the whole continent Ethiopia. Alright, so we'll leave off right there. We're going to something else.